Hi, my name is Autumn Zaretsky, and I'm going to be talking to you guys about mental disabilities and the stigmas around them. So, first off, what exactly is a mental disability? A mental disability is any clinically significant behavioral or psychological syndrome that interferes with the ability to complete daily tasks. Some common disorders that you may have heard of include autism, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, Down syndrome, OCD, ADD, and ADHD. Mental disabilities are often stigmatized. But what is stigma? Stigma is having negative viewpoints about someone else because of someone's particular circumstance or quality. It is usually based on stereotypes. Common stereotypes around people with mental illnesses is that they are unpredictable, dangerous, and unreliable. Having a mental illness is perfectly normal. In fact, 1 in every 5 adults suffer from a mental illness. That's 20% of the adult population. Despite this data point, mental illness has become a sort of taboo in today's society, meaning that we rarely talk about it. The reason for this is said to be because this topic is negative or sad, and no one wants to talk about sad things. But think about it this way. Do we avoid talking about a broken arm because it's sad? No, we don't. We talk about it freely because it's just a part of life. Mental illnesses too. Mental injuries are just as much as an injury as a physical one. The lack of mental illness in conversation, as well as prejudice and stigma on the topic, can cause someone suffering from a mental condition to feel isolated and ashamed of who they are. These feelings will only make their condition worse. Stigmatization of mental illness has been happening all throughout history, all over the world. In ancient Greece, a mental illness was thought to be a brand to mark slaves and criminals. During the Middle Ages, people thought that having a mental illness was a punishment from God. They thought that people suffering from a mental illness were possessed by the devil and therefore should be put in chains or burned at the stake. During the Enlightenment, sufferers were freed of their chains and institutions began to be established. They would even be granted freedom from the institutions if they proved themselves not to be dangerous. But unfortunately, in the US, things didn't get better. In the early 1800s, people with a mental illness would often be incarcerated with criminals with no heat or bathrooms. They would also suffer many beatings and be put in chains. To add to the issue, during the Nazi reign in World War II, stigmatization and discrimination reached its peak. In this time, hundreds of thousands of the mentally disabled were brutally murdered. But although throughout history and to this day there are flaws in the way that we see and treat people with mental illnesses, we still have to acknowledge the good side of things. A good example of this is the ADA, or the Americans with Disabilities Act. On July 26, of 1990, President George H.W. Bush signed the ADA. This act prohibits the discrimination of people with disabilities, both physical and mental. It changed the world to become more akin to the one that we live in today by giving people with disabilities more opportunities in life. Today, this act helps people with disabilities get jobs, transportation services, and telecommunication services. This has changed the lives of not only the disabled, but of every citizen in America. Although today we are more accepting of people with mental disabilities in our community, and we now have the resources and knowledge to help these people, we still discriminate against them. Despite their better treatment, people with mental disabilities become homeless and are incarcerated in our modern world. According to the Tennessean, the top 5 most common mental disorders are anxiety disorders, depression, bipolar disorder, PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder, and schizophrenia. Every mental health disorder is unique and each have different characteristics. Because of this, all mental illnesses have different stigmas or beliefs around them, meaning that different mental illnesses are treated differently by society. For an example, let's compare depression and schizophrenia. There are many inaccurate stigmas around depression. It is thought that people with depression are just whiny and just using the term mental illness as an excuse to be whiny. They are also thought to be defective or broken. Other stereotypes include that they have no willpower, are dangerous to the people around them, and that they are antisocial. Meanwhile, there are much different stereotypes around schizophrenia. People who have schizophrenia are thought to be crazy, violent, unpredictable, and dangerous. They are also thought to be criminals. It's common belief that they will fail at everything they try to accomplish. Therefore, it is very hard for them to get a job because people think that they are unable to work. Throughout history and to present day, mental disabilities have been the focus of stigmatization, negative judgments, and discrimination. People suffering from these disorders have not been treated as equals in society and have faced much isolation. Not only does stigma affect all mental illnesses, but affects each mental illness in a different way.